Hello and welcome back. In my last video we discussed the logic connections for the forest phase of my Calodan Magistrate challenge. This included the connections for the cutscene introducing the Magistrate's hired mercenary Lang that separates the forest phase from the town phase. After publishing the video I discovered two errors for the cutscene logic, which I've added to the description section of that video, including the corrections. I've also taken the time to record two short clips demonstrating how to make these corrections before we begin discussing the logic for the town phase. Okay, we'll start by looking at the properties for our target camera. Use define duration is turned on and a display duration of 7 seconds. Originally I had used a display duration of 5 seconds for our cutscene, but later decided that I wanted it to last a little bit longer, so I adjusted this up to 7 seconds. However, this also must be matched by the combined time of our time delayer and our text displayer that are connected to the camera when the camera is activated. So this time delayer, when the camera is turned on, it was set to a 2-second delay, which then will send a signal to our text displayer, which we'll look at here. So when the delay was completed, we go to question, and Lang will ask the player, what do you want? The properties for this text displayer was set to a 3-second text duration. So the 2-second time delay plus the 3-second text duration equaled the original 5-second duration for the target camera. However, we want this to be 7 seconds to match the duration of the target camera. So my solution was just to come to our time delayer here and adjust the properties of this to change the delay time from 2 seconds up to 4 seconds. And we can see that here. So now that 4-second delay plus the 3-second text duration will now match the 7-second time duration for our target camera. And that's the first of our corrections. Alright, our second correction has to do with the logic for how we generate or start the cutscene. That's based on this counter, which records when the two enemy waves have been defeated in the forest phase. So when that target of 2 is reached, we send a signal to this first time delayer, which is set to 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, the target camera begins the cutscene. This is to give our enemy wave a chance to be fully generated before the cutscene begins. And this was the enemy wave generator that has Lang and his two HK-87 droids, assassin droids, for our cutscene. I failed to make that connection to generate them. So new logic connection when the target is reached from our counter. We need to come over to our enemy wave generator for Lang and the two droids and generate that wave. Without that connection, Lang and his two droids won't generate. The cutscene will run, but there'll be nobody standing there. So that's the second of our two corrections before we move into discussing the logic connections for our town phase. Okay, so now we'll start discussing the logic setup for the second phase of our challenge, the town phase. Once again, once the two enemy waves have been defeated in the forest phase, that begins the little cutscene where the player will be introduced to the hired mercenary Lang, and as soon as that cutscene ends, the game will then transition into the town phase of the challenge, allowing the player to enter through the main gate. So we'll come over and we'll first take a look and review again the creativity toys that we need for this. So for our first two main enemy waves, we'll need an enemy wave generator for each. I've configured them much the same way using the same enemies that we had for the two enemy waves for the forest phase. So a total of 11. 6 of them are long ranged and 5 of them are short ranged with hand-to-hand weapons. And then the properties, once again, generate at random locator, because we will be using 15 locators for these 11 enemies. Generation delay of 0. And once again, I've disabled the generation effects. Come over to the second main phase, enemy wave, and it's the same enemies once again. and the properties are the same. Going to generate a random locator, generation delay is 0, and disable the generation effects. Alright, I used 2 enemy wave generators for the final fight of the town phase. One for Lang. And I'm using Tolomar Rees as the enemy that simulates the mercenary Lang. And the properties generate at random locators off because there's only going to be a single one. Generation delay is 0, and I disabled the effects. And I used a second one for the HK-87s, except instead of just 2 like the Chapter 13 episode, I'm using 4. So I have 2 long range and 2 with batons. And I'll tell you what, at extreme difficulty, the 2 with batons, they can be nasty business. Hard to defeat. So I did turn on generate at random locator. It's not a big deal, but you'll see why once we discuss the locator connections. Alright, so here a locator has already been connected for Lang, and I showed you for the droids that the 4 locators had already been connected, and I had them placed where I want them to be generated after the 2 main enemy waves have been defeated. I decided to place them on the main path in front of the Magistrate's entrance, so I wanted Lang in the middle. And then the other 4 locators there, all with the blue dots facing forward, those are for the droids. I set random. They're so close together it really doesn't matter. Plus, if they'll start spreading out throughout the town, you can do whatever you want to do with those. You can spread them out around the town or have them standing close together in front of the Magistrate's residence, however you want to do that for your game if you're recreating this. Alright, once again, our control mechanism is a counter. Properties are set to 4, 1 for each of our 4 enemy wave generators, and I've elected to turn off the visible display so that the player doesn't really know where they are in the count. And then a radar marker, which will be activated in front of the Magistrate's residence once all 4 waves are defeated, allowing the game to then proceed to the boss fight. And these are the properties we're looking at. Yellow arrow, beacon location is the locator. And that locator has already been connected. And I've placed this locator right here in front of the Magistrate's entrance door, and showing that that locator is indeed connected to the radar marker. Okay, so now we'll start making the logic connections that will begin the town phase. That begins when the cutscene ends and the target camera has been deactivated. So we'll start with this first, new logic connection. When the target camera is deactivated, we're going to come over to our repeater and we're going to turn that on, because the henchmen are now going to ring the bell again, alerting everyone that Ahsoka is entering the town. That's connected to the time delayer for 12 seconds to ring the bell 3 times, which then inputs a signal to the logic gate to generate our enemy waves. When the forest phase was complete, this counter has a connection to that logic gate when the target is reached to close it. So now when the timer inputs its signal into this logic gate, it cannot output because it is closed. So now we're going to use this logic gate to start the town phase by using the input blocked selection. So the first thing I'll do is I'll come over here, so when input is blocked, we can come to our boombox and we will change our music selection. We use Micro Technor for the forest phase, and now we're going to go to Epic. And I like the defense build. Actually, my daughter chose all the music. I thought she did a great job, as well as the sky. I mentioned that in one of my earlier videos. Really added to the effectiveness of the game. So we'll come back here, new logic connection. When input blocked again, because that gate has been closed, we're going to defeat Lang and the two droids from our cutscene. That's because they will reappear later in the town phase. So just showing here, this is who we are removing from after the cutscene, and they will face us after the two main waves have been defeated inside the town phase. So now we'll come back up to our logic gate here again. Once again, new logic connection on input blocked. We're going to generate the first enemy wave of 11 enemies in the town. So we will generate that wave. And the town phase has begun. So new logic connection. When the wave is defeated, that will generate the second wave of 11. New logic connection. When the wave is defeated, we'll come over to our counter, and we're going to increment that by 1. And once again, that counter was set to 4. Our second enemy wave, new logic connection. When the wave is defeated, we will generate the wave for Lang. And also new logic connection, when the wave is defeated, we will simultaneously generate the wave for the 4 assassin droids, 2 long range and 2 with batons. New logic connection, when wave is defeated, we also need to record this in the counter. So increment by 1. And we'll do the same for Lang. New logic connection, when we defeated him, we will also increment our counter by 1. And the final connection for the 4 assassin droids, when they are defeated, new logic connection, wave defeated, we will also increment by 1. So that records our 4 enemy waves have been defeated. Alright, when those waves have been defeated, new logic connection, when the target is reached, we will activate our radar marker. And that'll put our yellow arrow in front of the Magistrate's main entrance door. We also will move this over and make a few more connections here in front of our Magistrate's entrance. So new logic connection, when the target is reached, we want to deactivate this trigger area that is connected to the text displayer that tells the player they cannot enter until they defeat all the enemy waves. New logic connection again, when the target is reached, we want to activate this trigger area, which is used to open the first door to the main to the Magistrate's residence. Alright, new logic connection, when the target is reached. We also want to begin the boss fight. So we will turn the boss fight with Darth Maul on. And just showing here that I have selected Darth Maul to represent the Magistrate. Similar fighting style. Actually a really awesome fighting style for Maul. He might just be my favorite boss fight in the entire game. Alright, new logic connection when entered by player any. Actually, this is a mistake. We don't need a connection here to the counter. I was thinking of the radar marker. I fooled myself in my voice over here, forgetting that I had made that error. We'll just go ahead. We're going to move our counter back in place in line with our town phase logic to keep it organized. Oh, I fooled myself again. We're going to change our music. So when the new logic connection, when the target was reached, we'll start our third piece of music for the boss fight. We'll come under the intense drawer and Anakin versus Obi-Wan. Really good piece of music for the boss fight. I think I can now correctly say we're moving our counter back in place. Well, oh, I am still wrong. More connections. I videotaped this a while again. So target reached. We're going to come to this second text displayer. And we're going to come down to, where did I go? Survival modes. And we're going to say one last time, prepare for an enemy attack. We've done this every time for all three phases of the game. Finally. We'll put our counter back in place. Now we still need to make the connection to the radar marker that I was thinking of before when I made the first mistake. So we'll come back to our trigger area that allows us to enter the Magistrate's residence. So new logic connection when entered by player any. Now we're going to come back and we're going to turn off the radar marker, much like we did for the forest phase. Once we enter the town, the radar marker is deactivated. So now that radar marker will disappear as we start the boss fight phase of the game. Okay, we'll come back over, and I think it's safe to move our two trigger areas back into place. This one that unlocks and opens the forward door there. The second door, as you recall, has no logic connected to it, so it'll always open and close freely as the player approaches and walks away from it. And our second trigger area for the text displayer, we'll move that in place so if the player attempts to enter the Magistrate's residence before defeating the 4 enemy waves in the town phase, it'll tell them that they have to defeat all the enemies first. Alright, we're going to move our text displayer here, the second one, text displayer number 2. Back in over here just for a couple more connections. And that's for our prisoners asking us for help. So when you enter these trigger areas, new logic connection entered by player any. We'll come to our text displayer number 2. And we're going to come down to missions. Will you help me? Similarly, if the player walks into this trigger area, entered player any, that prisoner will also ask us for help. Back down to the missions drawer. I opted for a slightly different message. I need your help. And now we can place our text displayer back to our text displayer number 1. And that completes those connections. All right, there's one more thing left to do, and that's to demonstrate the locator connections for our 2 first and second main enemy waves in the town phase, which will be connected to 15 locators set to random in a very similar fashion to what we used for our forest phase that we described in the previous video. So we'll do that next. Alright, just like our forest phase, our two main enemy waves consist of 11 enemies. Connected 15 locators to each enemy wave generator, and then selected the properties to generate at a random locator. This randomizes the creation or generation of the enemies for the player throughout the town, and makes it a little bit different each time the player plays the challenge. So new locator connection, we'll connect this to our first main enemy wave generator, and we could connect that same locator to the second main enemy wave generator. And now these can be placed throughout your town as you wish. Like I said, I used 15. You could use more if you like. The blue dot always has which way the enemy faces, so I placed one on either side of the entrance here on top, so the potential to have enemies generate up there on top of the wall. I placed one here in the center of the path and a second one there. So that's 4 out of our 15. So that left another 11. So I don't remember exactly how, but I scattered 5 on one side and 6 on the other side, just showing here. You can see where some of these locators are scattered throughout this side of the town. Once again, wanting to spread them out and make the player explore the entire map. And here's some of the locators for the enemies that have been placed throughout this side of the town, for a total of 15. I didn't place any on any roofs, but geez, you could if you wanted to. You could go ahead and even have an enemy standing up on a roof. They will also jump up. If you're up on a roof, they'll jump up after you, or jump down to follow you if you jump down. So they may end up on the roof anyway if you're running around on top of the roofs. So that's the final connections for everything that runs the town phase, the second phase of the Calodan Magistrate challenge. In my next video, which will be the final video for this series, we will discuss the final connections for the boss fight and for ending the game, and all the resets that need to be done so that the challenge can be rerun within the game without having to exit the level and reload the level. So we'll discuss that next time. Until then, everyone be safe and be well, and once again, thanks for watching.